page. You can click on the poster. It just talks about FFCRA, okay? The FFCRA provides for emergency paid sick leave when an employee is absent for some kind of COVID-19 related issues. I'm going to read those out. They're a little boring, but I'll read those out to you. There are only 5 ways that an employee gets this paid sick leave. If the employee is subject to a federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation order, if the employee has been advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine, if they've experienced symptoms of COVID-19 and are seeking medical treatment. These are all on the websites and various things too, just in case you're trying to scribble them down. If the employee is caring for an individual who is subject to a quarantine or isolation, if they're caring for a son or daughter whose school or place of child care is closed, or if there's some other condition that the Secretary of Treasury approves, which of course is a catch-all. What I want you to know is most of the employees who are affected by this are not sick with the COVID-19, as you probably know. The very small percentage of people are actually sick with it or subject to an order of quarantine. But a lot of what we're running into are the child care issues, right? We've got employees who can't come in or can't come in for full time. So this federal emergency sick leave provides for 2 weeks, or they refer to 10 days, so they refer to 80 hours of paid sick leave that the employer is supposed to provide. There is an exception which is coming up. I'll talk about that in a moment. If you have a part-time worker who's covered by this act, then they would be paid what they typically work in 2 weeks, okay? And those paid sick leave benefits are after the California paid sick leave. So if they still have their annual 24 hours, 3 days of California paid sick leave, then they use that first, and then they'd have access to the federal 2 weeks. Now, the problem may come if you're a small business and you think about paying all your employees to take 2 weeks off and no work is being done and no money is coming in, and that's a big problem for a little business. So, again, just analyze whether those things have occurred with your employee, whether they're quarantined, isolated. If they're under the child care provision, then you may qualify for a small business exemption, so you don't have to pay that. So the small business exemption is for employers with 50 or fewer employees. It's stated in the law, but it's only in this emergency sick leave provision. It doesn't describe how to get the exemption. It says the Secretary of the Treasury will grant them, but there's no process. And now the federal government came out with Department of Labor FAQs that say there's never going to be a process to get this exemption. But I have a solution. In the resources page of my website, if you go to the resources page, we have just posted a document that any small business under 50 employees can create for themselves. And the Department of Labor says you need a document that says you will experience such expenses and financial obligations that those will exceed available business revenues and cause the small business to cease operating at a minimum capacity. You don't have to write that down. I'm going to give you all the factors. It's right on my website. So the memo or document needs to say, again, these are all in the document already, that providing the paid sick leave would result in the small business's expenses and financial obligations exceeding business revenues, can't operate at minimum capacity. The absence of the employees requesting the paid sick leave would entail a substantial risk to financial health and operational capabilities, and that there are no sufficient workers who are able, willing, and qualified to be available to perform the labor and services that your company needs if those employees are gone. So there's some hope for you if you are a small business and can't afford it. If you are a larger business, you don't qualify for the exemption, then you do need to provide that money up front for the emergency paid sick leave if an employee qualifies, and you are going to get a tax credit down the road in your quarterly taxes later in the year for paying out that sick leave. Again, the second component of the FFCRA is the Expanded Family Medical Leave Act. The FMLA has been around for years and years and years, It covers employers with over 50 employees. It covers 12 weeks of unpaid leave, as you may know, if the employee has worked a certain number of hours over the last 12 months and all of that. So if you're a small business, you've probably never encountered the FMLA. But this is expanded FMLA. It covers all employers with 500 or fewer employees. It's for paid leave. It's for 12 weeks of paid leave. And employees only have to work 30 days to qualify for it. When I first heard this, I panicked. I don't know if you're panicking. If we paid all of our employees who are watching, their children now, 12 weeks of paid leave, just go out of business. I just shut down right now. I have 10 employees. That'd be a nice paycheck for them. But this FMLA leave is only for the child care issues related to the COVID closures of school, child care unavailable, and that's for a parent or guardian who regularly has someone else watch their children, just as a condition. It's possible, it appears possible from the guidelines for this FMLA that you can get your small business exemption for this purpose as well. So just to repeat, if your employee, if you qualify, you're under the 500 employees, if your employee needs to care for their child, they need the child care because of COVID, then they do qualify under this expanded FMLA for that paid leave. You'd come up with your reasons for your small business exemption, document it, and then the federal government says that'll be your protection in case you're sued. Alternatively, of course, you're welcome to provide that leave to your employees with pay. Okay? Those are the two components of the FFCRA. There are some caps that the FMLA provision for the child care is capped at $200 a day, $10,000 maximum. The paid sick leave is capped at $511 a day. And then if it's just for school closure, it's just $200 a day. That provides any relief for you. That expires on December 31 of 2020. There's no carryover of the leave into 2021. And if you don't comply, and you have to comply, watch out, because there are penalties. An employee can bring a discrimination lawsuit. They can get liquidated damages and all kinds of remedies. Enough on the FFCRA. On the CARES Act, which you're having a speaker through the Rancho Mirage Chamber of Commerce, Dan Meacham of the Money Protector. He's talking on Friday in a webinar on this. I will only give you the overview because he's much more capable than I am about talking about finances. The cool thing about the CARES Act is that it provides a Paycheck Protection Plan. If you have 500 employees or fewer, you can qualify for this CARES Act funding. It was supposed to be ready right away. It turns out it wasn't. No surprise there. The applications are through your community banks, so your bank where you have your work account. At first, I heard that Wells Fargo was not providing this kind of loan. As of yesterday, they have jumped on the bandwagon. So first, go to your bank where your business account is. Ask them for the Paycheck Protection Plan application. It's only a 2-page application, but then they're going to need certain additional information, like your payroll for all of 2019, your payroll as of February 15, 2020, because the Act requires that you were in operations on that date. They're going to ask how many employees you have and your average monthly payroll and that kind of thing. The goal is to provide small businesses with 2 months or 8 weeks of payroll money to keep your employees employed so they don't have to take off, be laid off, furloughed. And once you get the money, I recommend that you keep it in a separate account so you can account for it, or keep real careful accounting for what you use the money for. The beauty of the payroll protection plan is that it is forgiven, no payments back, if you follow the guidelines. Yes, everybody, yes. And you've paid your employees. It also can be used for 25% of your mortgage tax, some lease payments, lease tax, and interest, not tax, and for your utilities. So I recommend you apply for it. Again, if it's like free money if it's forgiven. If you don't follow all the guidelines, you don't use the funds for the restricted purposes, You will have to pay it back, but even then it looks like it's going to be a 1% interest rate and payable over 2 years. So Dan will tell you more about that later. Those need to be coordinated with the disaster loans, which again Dan will talk about on Friday. All right, so what about other things affecting our business, like the order of the California governor to stay at home? How about the Riverside County Public Health Director who came up with this order over the weekend that no one can go anywhere, no gatherings of anybody anywhere. Wear your masks, go home with your family. If you're in lockdown, if we're restricted in our movement, first I want you to look at your business purpose. Essential businesses are exempted from the governor's order and even from the Riverside County Public Health Director's order. The essential businesses are those which fall within what they call the critical sectors. I won't get into too much detail, but I'm going to give you a website. If you go to covid19.ca.gov, covid19.ca.gov, the California government has a bunch of links you can click on, but basically you're going to look for essential business. You're going to look for the critical sectors. There's 16 of them, and there's a definition of essential businesses there. And for example, for me, it includes legal professional services when necessary to assist in compliance with legally mandated activities and critical sector services. So I'm staying open. I have a few employees here. We're all wearing masks when anybody breathes or moves near us, when our door is locked. But you may have an exemption, and you may not have to stay at home. You may be able to have a few employees in your office with masks and keep operating. If you need any more help on that, let me know. So what happens to all the wages for all the lost work time if people have just been laid off or they're going home? Well, let's talk about that. Here are my tips for immediate personnel action. First, you need good protocols and policies in place, especially for working at the office. You need your safety guidelines, how to clean areas and spaces, everybody maintain your social distancing, keep a mask, and all of those. You don't need me to list those because they're all over the internet, all over the television. If you're working remotely or you have some of your employees working remotely, here's a huge tip. Get a policy in place. I have a free policy on my website. I think it's on the blog page. It may be the resources page. You're welcome to it. It's a sample policy. Fill in your company name. Change it as you like or talk to your own lawyer. But the remote work policy is necessary because, for example, mine requires that employees take a picture of their workspace at home. Is it clean? Is it neat? Is it presentable if they're talking to customers over the phone on Zoom and showing their video? Are they keeping family away from your private information? Employers have confidential, proprietary information. You may have credit card receipts. You may have credit card numbers. Do you want family members and friends coming by the work area to see all of those? No, you have an obligation to protect them. Also, what are the employees really doing at home? I mean, sorry, but some, maybe they're in their jammies, but are they really producing for you? I have strict requirements for keeping timesheets, checking in with a supervisor, and if you doubt somebody's veracity, I hate to say this, but we're business owners. We know there can be people who can be goofing around. There are software programs. One of them is called Hub Staff, and I've heard that they can monitor your screens, your employees' screens at home, or even their keystrokes if you're really suspicious. So anyway, have a remote policy. Again, I've got a free one up there. Have a form filled out so you know how long their remote work is going to take, and give good guidelines, obviously. You'll have to provide equipment for them. And just so you know, if they're injured at home, that is covered by your workers' comp. So make sure they have a safe workplace. We can go into detail on that later if you have any questions. All right. How about the employees who are having symptoms or sick or maybe have COVID? Are you allowed to send them home? Absolutely. If they have the fever, the coughing, any of those symptoms that you've heard are from COVID, you're allowed to say, please go home right away, get treatment. You're allowed to give them sick leave. Of course, you must give them sick leave, but you're allowed to leave them out until they've had a test or some kind of diagnosis that they are free to return to work. You don't want to violate an employee's medical privacy. So here's the snag. Normally, we're not allowed to ask employees too many questions about their medical history or their medical problems. For example, if they have conditions that make them more susceptible to COVID, we can't ask those questions. However, we are allowed to say, you're showing symptoms. Please let me know everyone you've had contact with for the last 14 days. If they've met with customers, you need to notify your customers or clients. You're allowed to ask the employee if they've traveled in the last 14 days. Also, if you are going to send them home, then you have a number of options. And I shouldn't say just the sick employees, but any employees. If you decided that you're having financial difficulties because of COVID-19, you have all these options. List them off. You can reduce the hours of any employee due to COVID. You can reduce their hours in a day. You can reduce their days in a week, change their schedule, change their job duties, whatever you need to remain financially viable. You can reduce their hours to 0, and the beauty of that is if you have to cut some days or cut some time period when you don't have any money to pay your employees, you haven't terminated them. If you reduce their hours to 0, you can keep them on the rolls. You can tell them, I'll keep checking in with you, and they don't lose that security of a job. Of course, you can lay off or terminate your employees, but once you lay them off, that's a separation from employment. So you have to pay them their final pay, their vacation, give them the right forms, and that kind of thing when you lay them off. Let's talk about furlough. People keep saying, what's furlough, and do I want a furlough, and can I furlough? You certainly can. Furlough is typically fewer days worked per week. I have a furlough policy and a furlough form that I'm giving to my clients. Feel free to contact us, get a little consultation on with me and get that. But if you furlough an exempt employee, here's the trick. You need to keep in mind that they still have to make the minimum salary for California. You reduce their hours, they're still going to get that same salary, or they have to get the minimum unless you convert them to an hourly status, a non-exempt status. Just so you know, if you have 26 or more employees, then that minimum salary is $54,080. If you have under 26, then you have $49,920 as your minimum. So keep that in mind. If you convert an exempt employee to a non-exempt, you're going to want to give them a form. You have to give them a specific labor commissioner form. That's also on my website on the resources page to convert them to an hourly employee. They may not like it, but if it's what you have to do, it's what you have to do. You can suspend someone from the job, but that may be perceived as a disciplinary action. So I recommend reducing hours as opposed to suspension. If you have to lay off employees, just a tip, if you have 75 or more employees in your company, you'll have to follow the California WARN Act, W-A-R-N. I don't want to go into too much detail on that. You really need legal advice if you're laying off that many employees, if you're a big restaurant, for example. If you've already laid off employees and you had 75 or more to start, you need to get immediate help from a lawyer, because there are certain notices that must go to those employees or you've violated the law. All right. Enough about the downside here. How about if you need to give an employee a severance package? If you need to lay them off, but you really like them, want to give them a severance package, or you don't like them so much, but you want to give them severance so that they sign a waiver and release of claims against your company. You certainly can do that. I've gotten a lot of questions about that. You need to get a lawyer to prepare a good severance agreement that protects you and gets you released in exchange for that severance money. You're welcome to give severance without a release, but it's not the wisest move. If you're going to pay extra on top of wages, I recommend you get the release. And of course, if someone has had poor performance, this is an opportune time to say goodbye. You can simply terminate due to the public health emergency or COVID issues. Be sure and put that on all paperwork when you're separating employees. And then you can wean out the bad talent if there are any, and look for good talent. Your employees who are reduced in hours or furloughed or laid off all can collect unemployment benefits. Unemployment benefits have been increased, as you may know, by the government to try to handle this crisis. You need to provide the EDD website link to your separated employees, and actually you need to provide them with a document from the EDD called For Your Benefit. So give them that, as well as a notice as to change in relationship. Those are also on my website on the resources page. But every employee who's separated needs to get those two, the form and the pamphlet. So tell your employees they can apply for the unemployment benefits. If they have COVID-19 or some kind of health or medical related condition, and that's causing their absence from work due to COVID, then they can apply for workers' comp. Don't know if they'll get that. They can apply for state disability benefits, the paid family leave for state of California, and disability leave if applicable. I had a good solution one client came up with. They needed their workers to show up at work for a safe, obviously safe environment, but keep working, and they provided the workers with child care. They hired child care providers. That's one option for you. As far as other workers, if you have independent contractors, if you have freelancers, those folks are probably not going to get any unemployment benefits. It's possible that the system would be expanded to cover them, but just watch out, because some of them are going to want to accept cash on the side. They're going to say, I'll work for free, just give me a check in the next quarter. Well, then you're violating the labor laws, and you may be getting yourself into deeper hot water. All right, if you have any questions, I can take them at the end or get some advice if you are confused or concerned about all these options for employers. So here's the fun part. Here's some practical help for growing your business while we're sheltered at home. The first tendency is for all of us to become depressed and see our business floating away and no clients are calling and that kind of thing. Well, that may be true temporarily. What I've heard on the news now is that we're flattening the curve, right? There are fewer deaths, there are fewer illnesses. Let's look forward to the future. First, if you can't pay your rent, if you're desperate, you can't pay your mortgage, please don't get depressed. Please understand that all of us are going through this. All of us have had a financial downturn, and there is help available. I've had some clients contact me saying, we can't pay our rent. We're going to be, set out on the street with our family. Well, think about this practically. If the landlord won't negotiate with you, who are they going to get to pay? There's no other tenants who are going to have money right now to pay. So I suggest you negotiate with your landlord, your lessor, negotiate with your mortgage lender, set up a new payment plan. Most of them are open to that because they want to see some money coming in over time. Also look for opportunities in this crisis. They are there. Stay focused and healthy. Number one is take care of you. Don't just get so depressed, stop exercising, stop eating well, and give up. Keep fighting. That may sound like a cheerleader, but you've got to keep fighting. You've got to take care of yourself for the sake of your business, right? We're no good if we don't take care of ourselves. Manage your mindset, what you can and cannot handle. You cannot control. Whatever you can't control, put it aside. Focus on productive things. I would say the best thing to do, there's something called the Stockdale paradox. I won't go into too much detail. It comes from concentration camps back in World War II. And if you choose not to be too optimistic or too pessimistic, but just accept the reality and be disciplined to keep going, you can get a lot done and you can succeed. So make a plan. Here's what I suggest for your business. Evaluate your finances over the next 90 days. Of course, cut expenses where you can. If you can't cut expenses, try to work out payment plans, try to defer some payments, but work out what you can afford over the next 60 to 90 days. Look at what work in progress can be completed. That may be obvious to you, but there may be trust funds sitting around or retainers or deposits that customers have placed with you and they've been neglected. Get productive. Look at what your employees can do while they're remote. Look at what you can do to bring in work in progress. Are there any past due amounts that you can call in, that you can seek, that you can go to obtain if you go over to the office of the person who owes you money? That's one way to bring in some money. Also, if you have a line of credit, a number of authorities are recommending take out. This is up to you. I'm not a financial whiz. Maybe ask Dan on Friday. But you can take out all of your money in your line of credit. You can put it into a separate bank, and it's going to be like a little savings plan for you. If you need it, you can use it. If you don't, you can pay it back. If employees are suffering, one option is to provide them with a short-term loan, just so they can pay their rent, get their child care, or whatever they need to keep working for you. Protect your team. Encourage your team. I've found in my office, I've got strong people, but they are all frightened. Everybody's frightened, right? It's been a terrible time. It's been a worrisome time. Take the time to affirm them. Find out what they need. Now you have time. See how you can facilitate their being productive. Get them a laptop or whatever they need. And then customer or client communications. One of the cool things I heard from another speaker, and we've employed it, is to contact every single customer or client you have. You may think that's overwhelming. It's hundreds of people. Well, we have time. My phone is not ringing right now, okay? We've contacted, I don't know, last week probably over 65 clients to say, we're here, we're operating, we're going to get through this. What can I do for you? You know, I appreciate your business. Is there any small work I can do for you? If not, that's just fine. You know, do I need to get a message to anyone else in my office? Okay, let us know in the future how we can help. They will be shocked that you've got it together enough to call and say you care. I think it's a great tip. And all of my clients loved it when they heard from my office. If you have time on your hands, can you send care packages to your customers or clients? Let's say your biggest customers. Can you put a little package together with tea and cookies or something and have it delivered to their closed, locked door? You know? You can send things in the mail. The mail is still operating. And then the clients will know you care and remember you in the future. How about paper notes? Remember thank you notes in the olden days? Send a note to your clients, their customers. Let them know you're going to get through this and help them. The other option is looking for new talent. There are a lot of people laid off. If you have been looking for that golden person to fill that one spot, it's been tough for months, that person may be looking right now. You can look on the job search forums. Work on marketing, advertising, updating your website. I'm working on my website like crazy with this time. There is free advertising available to you. The chambers have offered free advertising. I love it. Even Yelp is offering, I don't know, $25, and we had 140 hits. You know, take your time so that you can look forward to the future and increase your business. How about your company handbook? Needs an update? It doesn't have to come from me, but this is the time to look at your policies, see if they make any sense at all. How about setting up systems? How about templates? How about improving your purchase orders? There's all kinds of things that have been sitting on the back burner, right? Cleaning up files, cleaning out closets, storage facilities. This is the time. If you've done all that, you can read leadership books. You can read books on how to build your business. I find this fascinating. I never looked at them for 30 years, and now I'm starting to read those books and go, wow, there's creative ideas in here. I'm almost done, but I have a couple. Good. I'm almost done with Katie's giving me the 5-minute warning. Good. Purge and clean up your files. Get your workplaces in order, and work on business plans for the future. What are your dreams? What are your creative new products you could come up with? And then the last thing I'll say is spend time with your family. Call an older person who's trapped, anybody over 65, and let them know that you care. That is one other thing I could say about employees. My employees who are over 65, you're allowed to say, because you're within this category of persons at risk, I'm going to let you work from home. I'm going to have to send you home. Please understand that's the pursuant to the court order and the California orders. All right, I'm looking forward to these questions.
Karen, thank you so much. Yeah, that was a wealth of information and then some just really great tips at the end that I think maybe we might have heard in passing, maybe we haven't heard, but that are so important because I know people keep saying we're all in this together, but it really is true. You know, it is important to check in on your neighbors and your friends. We all really do need each other. And I'm going to turn it over to Rhonda. I think she's going to go through and read a few of the questions below, and then once she's done with that, we'll open it up to any of your questions you want to ask.
From Neil Lau, he asks, my internet connection's unstable, so hopefully I get through this. For the FFCRA, and what if someone got COVID-19 before April 2nd? So it's a two-part question.
I didn't hear the first one. I heard with the FFCRA and then your internet froze.
Do you have to get sick after April 2nd?
Okay. So before the FFCRA was in place, still you had California paid sick leave available to the employee. So I think the question is, if they got sick beforehand, they still need leave now, and that just because the act wasn't in place doesn't mean you don't have to pay. So if your business is covered by the act, you do still need to provide at least 2 weeks of paid sick leave.
Perfect. The next question comes from Amy Paul. She said, is child-related leave all or nothing? If an employee can work a half day, and can they receive the benefit from the other half of the day when the other half of the day is being covered by another person? So like husband and wife alternating care for kids so that they can get a half of a work day in.
That is a great question. Thanks, Amy. And that's what my employee's doing here. We have had one employee who's here with her son for a period of time and then going home. They are qualified for the California sick leave, and they would be qualified for the sick leave and the family medical leave provisions. And it doesn't have to be all or nothing. They could get hours. In fact, sick leave is accessible at 2-hour increments.
Okay. And then I have a comment from Kim from the Coachella Valley Women's Business Center. She suggests that people contact SBA resource partners to ensure that they are applying correctly for the loans, and also to ensure that they have the most current information. It's been very fluid, to say the least. SBA resource partners include the Coachella Valley Women's Business Center, the SBDC, and SCORE. So if you're looking to get those loans or apply for those loans, they have the most accurate information at those three entities. So, and then next, let's see, I have one more question. This one comes from Dennis Cook. He says, if I have an employee that is out on a leave, although the doctor's note doesn't give a reason for the leave, can I require a doctor's release for the return of the employee? This doctor's note is from an online call in service in San Francisco. Employee is unlikely to return on the return to work date and will probably extend her leave of absence for another 2 weeks. I have not been given a valid reason why this employee is off work. I have heard it is because of an anxiety issue.
Okay, good. So non-COVID related. I'll answer that in two parts. With the COVID paid sick leave, the government is saying you cannot ask for a doctor's certification. Of course, with any return to work, if someone's been off and sick, you can ask for a doctor's certification as long as they've been gone 3 days. You can't ask under California law until they've been gone 3 days. So as far as that goes, that's when you can ask for the doctor's certification. If the employee is not providing a reason, but they have a doctor's note, you're supposed to provide the leave. If it's excessive or you are suspicious about it, You can ask for, again, another doctor's note, but either way, if you have 50 employees or more, they fall within the Family Medical Leave Act, and they have a total of 12 weeks of leave. It may not be paid, again, unless you fall under the expanded Family Medical Leave Act. So that's a little bit of a confusing question. If you want more specific information, you should contact an employment lawyer. There may be a way that that person is on disability leave, like I said, paid family leave, or some other type of leave if FMLA does not apply to you.
Next question is from Megan Vila. She said, if you send your employee home who is over 65, can they file for unemployment?
Absolutely, they can.
Okay, next question is from Joshua Dunn. As a one-stop shop with no employees, I do both rideshare driving and graphic design. Would I be eligible for any type of forgivable loan or advance?
Good question. Now, Dan will answer that on Friday, but the CARES Act does provide for some paycheck protection, actually, for independent contractors and sole proprietors. That doesn't occur until April 10. There's a delay. In other words, employees are covered first, but independent contractors are welcome to apply. And if you have a small business, I don't know if you're a corporation or an LLC, you can always apply for the disaster loan assistance as well.
And those are all the questions in the chat. If there's anybody else has any other questions, please feel free to raise your hand or put into the group chat.
I don't think so. I don't hear anybody asking anything. Well, Karen, we just cannot thank you enough to have an attorney give up their time for an hour to just help spell this all out for our local businesses. And I see a lot of nonprofits that are on here as well. It's just so appreciated. Thank you for showing up time and time again for your community. We truly appreciate it. We are all in this together. We'll send out an email if you are on the call, just with maybe some of the additional links that have been put in and some additional Zoom conferences. Again, if you have more ideas, let us know. Otherwise, take care, everyone. And thank you again, Karen. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Katie and Rhonda. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Be well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Katie, are you stopping the record?